Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Guys Who Stared. Stats Cade Kennedy here with you alongside Tyler Riggs as we have finally made it back to what some people would say is the official start of the college football season. It is week one finally upon us.
We don't need that week zero stuff.
Week zero, we already have a video talking about that a little bit. As always, you can click on that on the channel. But hey, before we get going real quick, as always, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. It doesn't seem like a lot. It only takes a few seconds of your time. And if you're thinking, well, it only takes a few seconds, is it really that important? Unfortunately, yes, it is. It is actually very important for, trying to grow the channel, grow the brand, grow the whatever you want to call it. It is important to do, and we do sincerely appreciate it. We really do.
We want to grow the discussion. Put in your thoughts. Put it in the comments. Let us know. We can address those. Love some good discussion going on. I will debate anybody on anything. Well, you can throw in those hot takes.
You can do that in the comments section, or if we do a video responding to some stuff. But
yeah,
it is finally time to get into week one of the college football season. I mean, what better game to start off with than 11 a.m. ABC, the Aflac kickoff? Why they changed brands from Chick-fil-A, I have no idea. It was perfect. You're in Atlanta, in the new Superdome, as I'm going to call it, the Mercedes-Benz Superdome there. Great stadium, by the way. I could go on for minutes about that, but I'm not going to. Clemson and Georgia is the game, top 15 matchup. Should be an absolute fun one.
Oh, man. Do we find out if Dabo is really a fraud? Is Georgia just in that
You said it, not me.
Is Georgia in the kill dogs mode? I mean, where are we at? Because, Georgia, I think we saw it a little bit in the Florida State Bowl game, right? They, I think, were a little upset about how things ended in terms of the way the college football playoff last year. So the only thing with this Georgia team, Cade, obviously bring back Carson back in a year where maybe there isn't a ton of high-end talented quarterbacks. He's going to be a guy that's looked at to be one of the better ones in the nation. What's around him? Who steps up? I mean, you lose Brock Bowers, obviously, the NFL, and land McConkey to the NFL. Who steps up in that offense to kind of make things go for this team? Is it ETN? Is it somebody else? Because Beck's not the type of quarterback to do it all by himself, I think.
And that's what we talked about last year. I mean, it's the same question this year. I mean, what do we know about Georgia? What do we know about a Kirby Smart Georgia team that's going to happen? Number one, they're going to have a great defense.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely going to happen. Yep. They've got a good offensive line again this year. Someone is going to step up. I think Travis Etienne is going to have a big day at some point. I don't know if this is going to be the one. It's so early in the season. Clemson still has a lot of talent on the defensive side as well. Last time these two got together, if you remember, it was one of the biggest rock fights you could remember of a game. Defensive score. It might be similar to that. We might see a 14-7, 10-3 type of game here. But I'm looking forward to that just as much as you are, Tyler. I want to see who is the one that eventually breaks this thing open. Someone's going to become a star on week one. Who is it going to be is going to be the big question here.
Is it Cade Klubnik? Can he kind of shake the ghost of DJ Uiagalelei a little bit? Some of their misfires after Trevor Lawrence, if you will. I mean, is he going to be the guy that steps up and says, hey, we'll put these Tigers back on the map a little bit? I mean, you think about this Clemson team. Little news that broke out earlier this week. Dabo Swinney no longer taking live calls during his coach's show after the run-in with Tyler from Spartanburg last year. Not me. Just want to clarify.
Not him.
I don't care about Clemson football that much. So after that moment, though, they reeled off 5 straight. They were 4-4 at that point. It's blowing up in the social medias about him having the fight with the fans, so to speak, over the air. They go reel off 5 straight to end the season. Everything looks a lot better, and I think that's kind of going under the radar a little bit going into this year. People are still thinking of the 4-4 Clemson, not the Clemson team that maybe finished the year with a little bit more momentum. So could they come out and pull a little sneaky one? Imagine. We had the Florida State-Ireland debacle. Does Clemson come out and maybe show up the dogs a little bit to start the 12-team playoff era? Woo!
I mean, that'd be something, but unfortunately, Tyler, I do live in this land called reality.
Wow.
And Georgia is as Georgia does, and as long as the defense is alive for the dogs, they're not going to lose this game. That Georgia is going to come out still, I think, a little bit mad about last year. It's a brand new season. Anything can happen. And I think Georgia sets the tone early. It's not going to be one of those, blowout types of games in the sense of, a 20-plus beatdown or anything like that. But I think Georgia can set the tone early.
Vegas has got it at 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, Vegas has got it at 13.5 there, as you can see on the screen. But I think Georgia comes out, they're able to win, not comfortably. There's nothing comfortable about a defensive battle. But I think they can win one of those 17-3, 14-6, somewhere in that type of close battle.
But I think if they do that, that's a little bit of, sky is falling. Because, again, Clemson, I think, by a lot of people, is looked at as maybe only living off the laurels of their past right now, right? So Clemson comes out and makes this a one-possession ball game. Even if they lose, might be a good sign going forward.
Well, if you watch the ACC tier list video, you could hear my thoughts about Clemson a little bit more. I think they're going to be one of those weird teams this year that kind of lives more on the defensive side than they do the offensive side. We will have to see what happens there, though. Georgia, Clemson, what a great way to start the year. I mean, the only thing, I'm never a fan of the big neutral site kickoff games. Never really have been. I would much rather see this at an Athens or a Clemson than meeting in the middle.
Yeah, campus
atmospheres are always, you're never going to beat anything like that.
But there's no money in that, by God, for the TV. We got to get the money.
Yeah, I know. Poor Aflac is struggling. That's why they need to put their name and sponsor a kickoff game.
Yes.
But either way, should be an absolute fun one to get the season started. And then that will bring us into a game that, number 2 Ohio State, Big Ten on CBS, big debut here. They're playing Akron. It is Akron. Akron is Akron is Akron, as James Franklin once said. You got to look nowhere but Akron. Ohio State is a 49.5-point favorite in this game. Tyler, you're not enough of a madman to pick Akron to beat Ohio State. I don't think anyone's enough of a madman to do that.
I'm not a madman enough to pick him to cover the spread, Cade, first of all. I just wait for the days and hope I'm alive long enough to see when LeBron buys Akron University and renames it LeBron U, and the Zips get a nice influx of NIL cash. It turns out they're only a basketball school, no football, just basketball only. But no, besides my crazy, time traveler conspiracy theories, the only thing I'm looking to see for Ohio State in this game, and we'll, if you see our conference previews, you'll kind of hear obviously a little bit more of this, but Will Howard, right? There's a lot of, I wouldn't say question marks, but Ohio State, you would think, have all the resources to go get anybody they want in the portal in the offseason. And you choose Will Howard, a guy that was not maybe on the radar of, okay, this is a guy that I think could helm a top 5 program, right? But the weapons are there. Quinshon Judkins, the receiver university. They got guys that you don't even know about yet that are going to produce and be NFL stars, because that's what they do at Ohio State. The defense is there. If Will Howard could maybe, dare I say, a little be Bo Nix-ish this year, Ohio State might roll pretty quick. So I'm interested to just see how he comes out looking in game 1 for the Buckeyes.
And that's where I'm at. This is one that, Ohio State, will they cover? I don't think so. I think you're getting enough second and third and maybe even some fourth-team reps in there.
They're covering.
Yeah, it's going to be bad. But like you said, this is more of a, almost a preseason type game, I feel you're going to get from this. It's going to be 35-0. People are going to start having fun outside the stadium. They're going to start leaving and doing whatever you want to do. It's not going to be anywhere close to the game. Ohio State's going to roll easily. But that brings us to a maybe even worse situation of this, maybe technically better. Oregon, Idaho, Dylan Gabriel making his Oregon debut, another game where Idaho, they were a top 10 FCS team at times last year. They have the ability.
Preseason top 10 again or near.
Yeah, they are a mighty foe in the FCS, which is something you could not have told 8-year-old me that Idaho would be a power in anything, that the place holding the Kibbe Dome would be a majestic place for FCS football. But it's good to see for the Vandals. It really is. And, as much as I'd like to see them come in and, maybe shock the world a little bit, it's not going to happen here. Also, as pointed out, because conference realignment is fun now, this game is on the Big Ten Network. I'm not going to sit well
What a
with
world
that.
we live in.
That's not going to feel right. I'm going to feel like this should be a game hidden away. I no longer get to complain about the Pac-12 network on this channel anymore because it no longer exists.
What's the app that they use for all games? Team One Sports?
Yeah, something like that.
Team One Sports. But no, Oregon kind of a great job, I would say, of just retooling, right? You had Bo Nix have a fantastic year, goes on to the NFL, wins the starting job, going for Denver this year, so big there. and you go find a guy that I think slots in right into what Bo Nix did well and Dylan Gabriel. It's a guy that you're not going to rely upon to say, okay, we need you to take deep shot after deep shot, make the smart decisions, make the throws clean. Doesn't have to be big-time throws. Just make good decisions and smart throws, and you'll have success. So for Gabriel, really a big spot. And obviously, we're both OU guys. We kind of saw how that played out in the offseason. Steelers were seemingly ready to turn the reins over to Jackson Arnold. So Gabriel had to kind of find his own path. Could have chose the NFL. Quarterback class stacked. Said, let me come back to college one more year. And I'll be rooting for him just because I thought he produced well at OU again, was a great leader, smart guy, especially when the talent wasn't quite there initially, right, in the turnover of the roster. But he's got weapons. And this Oregon team's deep, as they've been, speedy all over the place. They're going to roll in this one. The Vandals going to look like the old FBS days where they might be getting killed.
Like I said, as much as I'd like to see Idaho do something funny here, and, you can one of those take a picture of the scoreboard moments, we're winning 7-0 1 minute into the game or something hilarious like that. It's not going to happen here. Oregon's going to absolutely beat up poor Idaho. It's going to be another, like we talked about with Ohio State, you're going to get your second team, your third team. You're going to get to see reps from everybody. It's going to be a nice day for Oregon.
Hey, I will say the Kibbe Dome has glory, at least on my old NCAA files, so I'm sure I'm not the only one that brought glory to the Kibbe Dome back in the day.
Now we need Idaho for CFB 20. I'll say the official name to be nice to EA. Say, hey, we need FCS teams.
Yes, get them in there.
Give me the DLC there.
Give me the top 25.
Now we're going to Austin, where Texas, number 4 team in the country, 32.5-point favorites taking on Colorado State. Colorado State team that, had some players that could have transferred out, had some NIL deals, chose to come back and stay in an era where that really is not going to happen a whole lot. You like to see the loyalty, but can it get rewarded? It's going to be the big question throughout the entire season. I don't think it's going to happen here.
Probably not week one, but I will say, Colorado State shocked us a little last year, kind of going toe-to-toe in some games that you think maybe they shouldn't. Obviously, the Colorado game, kind of the marquee one there. That was great. Man, what a shootout that was. But Texas isn't quite, on the up and up maybe that Ohio State and Oregon is right now because they've had some big preseason injuries. That running back room awfully depleted after your starter and your backup out with ACLs. That's a big blow. So, to me, how does Quinn Ewers respond to that? He's going to have to shoulder the load really throughout the season now. I think a lot more than what was thought going into the season. Colorado State won't give him that challenge to really, push him to the limit. But I think they're at least a team that could, if you're trying to sleepwalk through it, if you're Texas, might cause you some issues. So Texas will have to come out, at least respect the opponent. As long as they do that, they should be fine week one.
Yeah, I think so. You just don't want to see a repeat of the Wyoming-Texas game last year. You don't want to put yourself in that kind of a situation with Michigan looming on the horizon in the upcoming week. But Texas, no problem here. I think the biggest story of the day is going to be how does that running back room look, who all gets snaps, what in the world goes on there.
Yeah, good week for them to solidify that, get some reps for those guys, and kind of figure that out, really.
But now we move on from Austin to College Station, Notre Dame and Texas A&M. SEC Saturday night is officially underway in Aggie Land of all places. Mike Elko returning back to face, guess who is the Notre Dame quarterback?
Yeah.
A guy he knows a little bit of. He coached him last year in Riley Leonard. This one's going to be fun. Texas A&M actually favored in this game, 3-point favorite. So we have, Tyler, a good old double upset, as I like to call it, a guaranteed upset, if you will. Either a top 10 team loses or you get the Vegas upset with Notre Dame getting the win.
Yeah, and, Notre Dame, again, talking about in kind of the conference tier lists and whatnot, is it a team where you're getting the bump, right, if you're Notre Dame? I mean, what do they have outside of Riley Leonard? What have they brought to the table this year? You got some guys that are supposed to be good, but can they produce? And you find out week one right away, hey, can they get after it? Because Notre Dame could be a playoff crasher, right? You're independent, so they're guaranteed, so to speak, as long as they perform a potential spot. So, and when you look at their schedule, not really a killer schedule this year. This is their arguably toughest game straight out the gate. So if you get past this, if you're Notre Dame, there's a chance you kind of cruise the rest of the season. For Texas A&M, under Elko, you're trying to shake the ghost of Jimbo Pass, right? Failing on high expectations.
You've been waiting all day to say that one, haven't you?
That was off the dome. That was off the top of the head, straight up. But anyways, trying to get past some of those ghosts. And Elko, I think, is a coach that, at least from the outside, looks like one of those guys that understands it's not all about him, right? He made the most of what he had at Duke. Look at Riley Leonard. Obviously, that was one of his products. And Leonard's a dang good quarterback. And you got a guy in Connor Wegman. Can he do something similar, make some magic with that crew? I'm really curious for the first time in a while to actually look at Texas Tech, not somewhat throw up in my mouth.
And I didn't know Texas Tech was
Texas
playing
A&M. You know what I'm saying. Texas A&M, not throw up in my mouth, and see if they actually perform a little bit.
Tyler, it was 1 year ago where I said, hey, you got to keep the idea of Mike Elko can beat a top 10 team in week 1.
Yeah.
Duke was playing Clemson.
Yeah.
I said, don't be surprised if Duke comes in there, head full of steam, wanting to prove a point, and they get the job done. Riley Leonard was the quarterback to do that. Now here I am, a year later, Mike Elko team playing a top 10 team at home in a way tougher environment than Wallace Wade Stadium.
Yes.
You're in Aggie Land. You're at Kyle Field. A&M fans are, chomping at the bit to see something productive here. They want to see what their new coach can do, someone they have familiarity with. They did not have to hire Mark Stoops. That was a whole debate for a week in the offseason that nearly set a lot of parts of Texas
nearly
on fire.
Split the fan base Civil War
absolutely style. Absolutely a near disaster avoid. I think Mike Elko comes out, says this is what we're going to do. We're going to play tough. We're going to play hard. And I think Texas A&M gets the job done with a technically not upset of Notre Dame.
Well, I think for Elko, that's the biggest thing. Can he establish an identity for this A&M team, which despite all the talent they've had in the past previous years, have you ever been able to pinpoint, okay, this is what Texas A&M football is right now? You haven't, right? They sometimes can run the ball well. Sometimes they're a little bit more of a high-flying passing game. Other times they have neither, and it's all defense. So if he could establish a good identity for Texas A&M football going forward, that could be a real big piece for them to be kind of realizing on some of those promises that they've, hyped up to have been in the SEC.
And I think that's what the identity of Texas A&M is going to be. It's going to be that tough defense. It's going to be something where, Riley Leonard, this is a guy he knows how to beat. You don't think he's going to make a few mistakes in this game with over 105,000 people screaming at him every single play?
And a coach that's seen you every day in practice, knows all your strengths and weaknesses. You can see why Vegas kind of favors A&M in this one.
Yeah, I don't blame Vegas on this one. I would take the Aggies as well because, I am taking the Aggies in this one. Should be a fun one, though. I'm excited to see how that all works out. And speaking of games that'll be exciting, how about big noon kickoff on Saturday as well? Penn State, 8.5-point favorites, going to Morgantown, a game that you don't see often with Penn State and West Virginia. One of those, I don't know if you classify West Virginia as Northeast, but kind of that general, at least college football terms, we think of them kind of grouped in with all the Big East teams and stuff like that. This is a matchup you want to see more of, at least for someone like me. These are two teams, closer proximity to each other, not as heated of a rivalry, I think, as the backyard brawl. West Virginia fans, or someone can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there, but Morgantown's going to be up for this game. Yeah. This is going to be an absolutely rowdy environment. It's not going to be easy for Penn State by any means whatsoever.
The ticket price for this game right now, we talked about it off air, is twice of that of the Georgia-Clemson game. It's $222 lowest ticket you can find right now. And I don't know who James Franklin pissed off at Penn State to where they made this schedule. But, man, I mean, this screams trap to me. Penn State walking into a feisty Morgantown. Garrett Green, West Virginia quarterback, electric, dynamic. If he starts running wild, I don't know if Penn State has the answer.
This is one where Penn State, this is a problem I always have with James Franklin teams. There's always a game where you feel something bad is about to happen with Penn State. There's always that kind of, and I'm not talking about Michigan or Ohio State. Those are games they're not going to be favored in, and there's a reason for that. They're usually the third best team in the Big Ten, or maybe fourth on years where the West has a really good challenger. This season is one of those where you're playing a team in West Virginia that very well could win the Big 12. They're one of like half the conference that could win the Big 12 this year. We'll talk about that, in our tier list videos as well. Big 12's insanely wide open. West Virginia wants to establish an identity immediately. You're coming off a great year, a year where going into it, we talked about, why has Neil Brown not been fired yet for the crime of existing?
Yeah.
And then he gets a 9-win season out of nowhere. All of a sudden, everyone's excited for this game. We're good. We don't need to fire him. If he can keep winning, who cares? I don't think it's going to happen here, though. I think this is one of those games Penn State has circled, West Virginia has circled. Penn State knows even though you're in a 12-team playoff era now, you can lose a game like this. You can't lose too many. And I think they come out, they're able to quiet down the crowd a little bit early. West Virginia will make a comeback late. They'll get all that energy, but I just don't think it'll be enough. West Virginia will cover, but they will not win.
I'm glad that you said, though, that you believe West Virginia could be a sleeper in the Big 12, because you know who I think is a sleeper in the Heisman race? Garrett Green.
Okay.
He's 5'11", 200 pounds. He reminds me kind of a Baker Mayfield type of energy. Where's the number 6? I'm just saying.
That last one might be a reach.
But it's a comparison nonetheless. Again, he is such an X factor. When you watch him play, you don't always know what's going to happen, but most of the time it's pretty exciting. So when you got Morgantown rocking like it's going to be, and he gets that rush of adrenaline momentum, man, I just, like you said, I feel bad. Have a bad feeling for Penn State. If I'm a Nittany Lion fan, get a little tight in the chest. I'm a little worried as I look forward to this game.
It'll be a good one, though. And I mean, the only thing that I think kind of kills it for me, and this is going to be, this is more me, Cade, the OU fan, talking than Cade trying to actually analyze games. 11 a.m. on Fox, just the worst.
No, it needs to be 7 p.m.
You put this at night, I'm probably picking West Virginia, to be completely honest with you. That place at night is like most college campuses. At night, that place it feels 10 times tougher than 11 a.m. in the morning.
I give you that one.
I'm sorry.
I give you that one.
Someone's got to play in that slot. Put 2 MAC teams in there. I don't care. Put someone else in there. Let the big teams play at night. But that brings us to a game that could actually be played at 11 a.m., but is instead the 6:30 NBC game. Fresno State and Michigan. For a solid one day, Jim Harbaugh was going to be back to be honored at this one, and then they pulled the plug on that once some other info from the NCAA came handed down. Sharon Moore, his first game as the official head coach for the entire season. Coached a few games last year, obviously. Had the big wins against Penn State and Ohio State as well, I believe, if I remember correctly. I may not be. But either way, it's officially his team now, and Michigan's got a good opponent to play. 21.5-point favorites over Fresno State. The question for me in this one, Fresno State, their Mountain West team, usually feisty, competitive, whatever adjective you want to use there. Michigan's defense is going to be elite again. We know that. We know Donovan Edwards can go running wild on just about anybody. There are weapons there, but who's going to throw the ball to him?
Yeah.
It's going to be the big question for Michigan.
It is, and, that's always the modern-day college football. You got to have the quarterback, right? That's just part of it. So, obviously, J.J. McCarthy, I mean, what a year, right? Yeah. The maturity he showed just to be able to lead them. Not always a guy that popped the stat sheet, but, again, when we talk about making plays in the big moment, he was there. Do they have that guy in the quarterback room? Not really sure. This could be one of those years where I say this in the sense that I think Jim Harbaugh left a team that is on the right track to saying, hey, we don't rebuild, we're just retooling, right? They've got the resources, they got the national championship now, no matter what the NCAA says, they're going to have that national championship, at least in their hearts, maybe not in the record books by the time it's all said and done. But regardless, as long as they come out of this one, don't have to dominate. You just got to play the game, show that you got some life. Like I said, that defense, it's going to be elite. That could really go a long way and kind of, I think, settle on the nerves for some of those guys and saying, okay, we're not just the one-hit wonder. We got to mountaintop. We feel we can still be there. I don't think it's going to happen this year, but this should be a game where it shows, okay, Michigan's here to stay and not sink back into the days of the Denard Robinson era, baby.
Man, you just got to throw some weird stuff in.
Every
once in a while, you just, you're being nice, compliment team, and then you just got to throw one pot shot in there.
One little pot shot.
Just one little
just
jab. Enough to agitate our viewer base. But
that's what it's about.
Either way, Michigan, I think this is one that, if they can score 17 points, they'll be fine. That's where that's how good their defense is. Yeah. They don't need a lot to get going offensively. You just need some basic competency. even though Michigan may not have an amazing quarterback situation this year, they're going to have enough to beat Fresno State. This isn't going to be a problem of a game. At least I don't think so. I think Michigan gets the job done pretty easily. So now we look at, the Labor Day game. It's going to be interesting, folks, because how many times do you get to say we have a Labor Day game with a top 10 team that is 0-1? Because the preseason poll doesn't change, obviously.
Right.
It covers week 0 and week 1. Florida State is now in immediate danger because you were a 17-point favorite here against Boston College. Bill O'Brien's first game back in the NCAA. Welcome back, Bill O'Brien, head coach of Boston College now. Florida State has to win this game. You cannot afford to lose to Georgia Tech and Boston College without some sort of drama immediately starting in Tallahassee. Not after the year you had last year.
No.
You do not go back to what you were when Mike Norvell got this job.
No, and not only do they have to win, they got to kind of erase some of those doubts, right? We got to see DJ Uiagalelei. We talked about in the Week 0 recap. He's got to be slinging that ball a bit. They got to let him use that arm because he's an athletic guy, but the run's not really part of his game, right? He's not going to scramble a lot. He's a bigger, bulkier guy. They've got to trust him, for better or for worse, to open up that offense because you've got a great backfield. You've got great receivers. But when you can't throw the ball vertically, it does not matter. Especially Boston College will load that box and dare you to do something about it.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, though, because you remember what happened the last time these two got together. It was a game where Jordan Travis got injured. Yep. Boston College up at home with Chestnut Hill, able to rally back, made it a 2-point game. That was one where a lot of weird things happened. Everything broke BC's way at the end except for, getting 1 2-point conversion. And that really was the only difference. Now, am I saying Florida State's going to have a quarterback injury here? No. And I pray that they don't.
No, yeah.
Because, you never want to see injuries, obviously.
No.
I would hope you'd have the humanity to see that.
Yeah.
But Florida State's in trouble if they lose this. I don't think they will. I think what happened in Ireland is going to motivate them for a little bit, at least, to make sure, okay, we've got to put the beat down on somebody. And even if they don't put the beat down on Boston College, because, BC could hold their own for a little bit, I think Florida State holds on and gets the job done.
If they lose this somehow, some way, we will see the first elimination of a team in the college football 12-team era in terms of the top 25 to say, hey, you are not getting into the playoffs this year.
All I'll say is if Florida State loses this game, someone is probably getting fired in week 1, which would be absolutely brutal.
The memes of DJ Uiagalelei immediate transfer portal might be reality if that goes down.
I mean, someone will try to get that job done if that does happen, but I don't think it will. I think Florida State bounces back. But now we get to go from, once again, kind of the world of interesting to it's Murray State and Missouri. That's all that needs to be said about this game. You just need to look at the matchup predictor for this one. I really don't need to say anything else. That picture can tell you enough. If Missouri lost this game, something horrible must have happened to their football team illness-wise or something.
Yes.
But Missouri will be fine. There's not even a spread up here.
The only thing that will annoy me about this game, not to give away too much, but Missouri's overrated. Just saying it now. And all this will do to serve is for the Missouri fans to say, oh, look, we're a true SEC contender. We're killing people. Cook is cooking. Caden Green was worth every dollar, even though he's not even playing tackle. I mean, it's going to be annoying, but they'll roll.
Well, you were just trying to get people to yell at us in the comments.
Hey.
I mean, I appreciate the bit in a way, but at the same time, we'll talk about that more in our
honest
SEC
thoughts.
tier list.
That's what you come here for.
That is true. Your honest thoughts. But Missouri's going to handle Murray State, no problem.
Yeah.
And we go on to the next one with the exact same situation. It's Utah and Southern Utah. Good news. We're going to see Cam Rising again. It's only going to be for probably a quarter and a half because then you're going to start putting backups in. It's going to be a nice time for Utah. If they lost this game, again, something disastrous must have happened. Utah's fine.
And I'll repeat once again, it will be an annoying game because Utah fans will clamor of how good they are, faces of the new Big 12. Although I don't think they're near as overrated as Missouri is. Still only serve to kind of pump up the egos, if you will, the Utes.
Okay. That's all I got to say is okay. We're just in the interesting everyone is overrated period of the show.
Not true. Not true. I'll give some flowers.
Well, let's go to this one then. LSU and USC. LSU 4.5-point favorites. The Vegas Kickoff Classic, all alone by itself on Sunday night. Gotta like seeing at least one college Sunday night game. That's good to see. That'll be a fun one, though. LSU trying to replace Jaden Daniels. You know, anytime you have a Heisman winner, going to be a bit of a hole to replace there. USC, though, doing the same thing. Caleb Williams, he's now off to Chicago. It's Miller Moss time now for the Trojans. We'll see how well that works out.
You know, I think this is a game where we find out two things. USC is a little bit more depleted than people realize on both sides of the ball. I mean, we know defensively they're trying to figure things out. Obviously, last year was not great on that defensive side of the ball. But I think offensively the coverage is a little bare. Nobody's talked about as much. I mean, yeah, Caleb Williams is an obvious one, but do they really have the receivers to compete in the Big Ten? Do they have, you know, the speed needed, the big offensive line? I mean, those offensive linemen, they go against the Big Ten, the Iowas of the world, are some hosses, right? Do you have the line, the trenches to compete with that? And I think people will go away from this game thinking, oh, yeah, LSU is actually a legit contender. They kind of, you know, slipped under the radar in the offseason. I think a big part of that is the Jaden Daniels departure, but this is a good football team around it. They were really clicking by the end of the year last year when they were healthy. That kind of bit at times. And I think Brian Kelly is going to kind of come out. They're going to kick some butt and establish, all right, yeah, we're here in this loaded SEC.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, you know, for a game with two new quarterbacks, to me, the defense is still going to be the bigger show here because LSU, that was really their Achilles heel last year. You have Jane Daniels being a one-man show at times, and then the defense gives up another 30, 40-point game. Southern Cal's Lincoln Riley team, that's really all I need to say about that. They do have a new defensive coordinator this year. Lincoln Riley finally learned not to trust Alex Grinch. So all I'm saying is everyone got vindicated on. Anyone with eyeballs finally figured that one out. But I'm excited to see how these defenses react because this is going to go one of two ways. This is either going to be three, actually. Let me rephrase this because I thought of a worse scenario for everyone. Both these defenses have improved, and we get an actual pretty fun game, pretty balanced game. We get one defense has improved. You know, maybe Harold Perkins nearly obliterates someone for USC. That's a very real possibility. That's one guy you don't want to mess with.
No.
And LSU either steamrolls USC or at least wins by enough that everyone looks at it and goes, okay. There's also the third scenario that both these defenses have not improved that much yet, at least being early in the season as it is, and we get an absolute firefight of a game. That would entertain me the most because I'm a fan of offense. You've heard me talk about this all the time. But I think LSU takes advantage of this one. I think Southern Cal puts up enough of a fight that it's a close game, but when push comes to shove, you're going to trust the more physical team. That's going to be LSU every day of the week.
I think Brian Kelly's just shown he's a program builder. Say what you want about the man, right? But it's a guy that knows how to build a team and win football games, regardless of where he's at. So I think his defense will definitely be much improved this year. A little bit more depth to it, and you'll see that show through this game.
We will move from a good game back to the realm of the bads. This is always the week one dilemma, though. You get good games, you get Chattanooga, Tennessee. Have fun, Tennessee fans. This is going to be a blowout again.
Yeah, party early on Rocky Top, you know. What do you say about Tennessee here? They're kind of in that unfortunate bubble where, yes, they're in the top 25, but I don't know if anybody really believes they're contenders in the SEC. Good team. How good? Seems like maybe a bit of a ceiling. I'm not for sure. I think Tennessee, as we've seen under Coach Heupel, man, like, he really does an excellent job of finding guys that fit what he wants to do. He's got good resources at Tennessee to get some higher quality athletes, and they go under the radar for whatever reason and kind of pop, as they go along. So I think this is one of those games Tennessee, like I said, just takes care of business quietly, and then maybe building a little bit towards that conference schedule. See return to Norman for Coach Heupel and some of those things. Knowing the challenges are on the horizon, Tennessee will look good in this one, and people will kind of not pay too much attention to it.
It's going to be interesting. The most fun part of this game is going to be watching announcers try to pronounce Nico Iamaleava's name. I can barely say it.
But you can say it.
I can own that I am not the best name pronouncer in the world. That's going to be a battle. That's going to be a tougher battle announcers versus his name, than Tennessee versus Chattanooga. Yeah. I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
Tennessee's going to roll in this one. It's not going to be a problem. Enjoy this one on Rocky Top because you get NC State next week. That'll be a lot more of a challenge, but that will be a fun game to see, unlike this one. And moving on, the Friday night game, Temple going to Norman, taking on Oklahoma. Sooners 42.5-point favorites in this one. Another similar situation to Tennessee in that OU fans just want to see Jackson Arnold in a game. They want to see him as the starter for the first time this year. Obviously, you had the Alamo Bowl last year, the 6-turnover madness game. Some of that not his fault. Some of it you can't throw it directly at the other team. It's a little bit of a problem.
Yeah.
We want to see how Jackson Arnold responds in this one, and I think he will. I mean, Temple's not going to be a good FBS team this year. You can look at that spread and see just about everything you need to know. Power rankings show Temple's going to be one of the 5 worst teams probably this year. This is going to be one that, I'll be at this game. Hopefully this is one of those you can leave at halftime type of deals, like we've talked about with a lot of the FCS games on this schedule so far.
Yeah, and this is one of those situations, to echo your points, where really the big things you're looking for from a Sooner fan perspective is the defense up to that hype it's been getting in the offseason, right? The Danny Sussmans, the Billy Bowmans of the world. The front 7 on paper is probably the deepest and best front 7 the Sooners have had in at least a decade, maybe 15 years at this point. Maybe since the last time Venables was around. As a defensive coordinator, they're deep, and you got secondary to boot. So can that defense put the clamps, so to speak, on Temple? And then, of course, the Jackson Arnold story. Saw some growing pains in the bowl game last year. Arizona had almost that full roster. The Sooners weren't quite working with full deck. Not that that's a great excuse because, like I said, can't directly throw it to the other team. How does he handle the pressure of now it is his team? There's no doubts. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Does he come out looking comfortable, or does he still have a little bit of that tendency to rush himself that we kind of saw at times last year when he got bigger opportunities? I'm curious because it's not a situation where we're worried about OU losing, obviously, but what's the narrative of this game by the time the clock hits 0?
Yeah, that will be the big takeaway from this one. Like I said, hopefully it'll be one, I can be back, done at halftime, watch TCU Stanford that night. That is the idea of an enjoyable day. Not saying I'm going to leave the game early, but when you have that opportunity to do so, that's usually a sign of a good day. When you can look and be like, I can head for the exits if I really feel like it. But we will see what happens here. I think Oklahoma rolls. If you're Temple, just don't lose by 6 touchdowns. That's really all not to be too mean to Temple. I mean, we'll see what they do.
They just don't. There's
not a lot there.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. To the next one, though, because the other game in the Sooner State is on Saturday, ESPN Plus, 1 o'clock Central. Oklahoma State with definitively one of the best running backs in the country in Ollie Gordon.
Correct you. The best running back in the country. I think undisputable at this point.
Okay. You're saying undisputable. Either way, Oklahoma State taking on a team with a 29-game win streak, 2-time defending champions, South Dakota State. The Jackrabbits coming to town. Oklahoma State, to put this into perspective, at least of right now as we're recording this, only a 10-point favorite in this game. South Dakota State's one of those tough teams that, we talked about it if you watched our Week 0 video mentioning Montana State. They're a team that you could probably put them in a conference, a mid-major, and they could be a favorite to win it. You could put them in the MAC, and they'd be up there with some of those teams to maybe win it. That's how good this South Dakota State team is.
Just to give perspective on that, Bill Connolly, if you subscribe to kind of the advanced stats, he's with ESPN, does the SP Plus stuff. As far as some of the power rankings, if you will, he has a full spreadsheet each year. It's kind of a neat thing of all the college football teams ranked from 1 to, I think it's 734. Obviously, Georgia's preseason number 1. It's like Fitchburg State. If you're one of the Fitchburg State fans, one of the 5, sorry about you. You're dead last. The hypothetical line on that game is like 133 in favor of Georgia.
Gosh.
Just to give you an idea. He's got South Dakota State ranked as the 50th best team in the country. Not just an FCS. Not just the top FCS team. 50th in the country. That's better than BYU. It's better than Cincinnati. That's better than Mississippi State. South Dakota State, if put into the Big 12 hypothetically, would be a top half of the conference team. So this is not some cakewalk, despite it being a Boo Pickens. And I think if you talk to Coach Gundy, a guy like Ollie Gordon, they understand that this is pretty good challenge week one. This might be one of the better games you'll see. And it's kind of a lose-lose for Oklahoma State, right? To the casual fan, if Oklahoma State struggles at all, they go, oh, well, it's terrible. Sky is falling because FCS team, right? But South Dakota State would whoop South Alabama. Let's put it that way, okay, to compare from last year. So if Oklahoma State could come out, handle business, the eye looks good, Alan Bowman does his job, this will be a quality win for Oklahoma State regardless of how the media tries to say, well, it's an FCS team.
This is one of those games that, I'm really looking forward to this because I think South Dakota State is going to do everything they can to make this game as miserable as possible.
They've got nothing to lose.
They have nothing to lose. They've got everything to protect with that win streak.
Yeah.
They're going to come out and throw a few punches. And I don't think it's going to catch OSU 100% off guard. Mike Gundy's already talked about that. He's going to treat this like he would any other conference game. You're put a whole lot more respect on it than you would last year against, Central Arkansas, obviously the South Alabama game that's been beaten to death by this point by just about everyone. But I would not be surprised if this is one of those you look at and go, how is this a 7-point game in the third quarter? How is this that tight of a game? It's because South Dakota State's just that good. They're a talented team. This is going to be a weird game that you look at. You don't really know who's going to win it, but then OSU will pull away in the fourth.
Well, and I think the biggest pressure is probably on Coach Nardo in that defense, right? This is kind of his big debut in that sense. You got some quality talent. We talked about Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman for OU. How about Nick Martin and Colin Oliver? Oh, my goodness. How about some players there? They're in every awards list, rightfully so. Oklahoma State's offensive line is getting incredible credit. They've got dudes all across that are potentially NFL caliber guys. And, for that defense, it's okay, you got Ollie, but can you support him with the proper clamps, if you will? Because you're going to need that throughout the conference season and to put yourself what they feel is, again, a team trying to vie to be the face of the new Big 12.
It will be an interesting one, to say the least. Unfortunately, it's going to be on ESPN+. That's the only negative there.
I've got ESPN+.
I mean, most people do.
Get with the
still,
program.
I do too, but hey, I'm just saying. Either way, next one up, Miami and Florida, Canes and the Gators. Billy Napier needs a big win. He needs a lot of them, actually. He is on the hot seat through sometimes his fault, sometimes no fault of his own. It is up to Graham Mertz and the Gators to win this game and defeat what you heard me call them earlier, the Pac-2 Avengers. You've got Cameron Ward, who's at Washington State, and you've got the amazing running back from Oregon State, whose name I've conveniently forgot at this time. I believe it's Damian Martinez. I want to say that is his name, if I've just remembered it. Miami is a 2.5-point favorite in this one. Florida has the toughest schedule I have ever seen for a team. I mean, you are throwing nearly everything. We'll talk about the SEC tier list, the November of death they basically have, where you're playing top 10 opponent after top 10 opponent. Florida needs a bone. They need anything to be given to them immediately. They have to come out full throttle and win this game. The only question, of course, is will they?
Is this a situation where both head coaches are on the hot seat, depending on how this one shakes out? Because Mario Cristobal, you're ranked in the top 25, but with some of the things that happened last year, some of the mistakes the team made.
Taking a knee would have been a good idea.
Would have been a good idea, but if you come out and, I dare say, choke on the road, it's Florida's swamp, but you're the better team on paper. You've got to come out and win. And for Coach Napier, the thing I'm interested in, he's talked up Graham Mertz all offseason long. He's the experienced guy. He's the guy that's got to lead us. But you got a real good, young, talented quarterback. Maybe not the experience, but he's got all the athleticism of DJ Lagway right behind him. How much of a leash does Graham Mertz get if Florida comes out and struggles here in week one? Do we have quarterback controversy early? I mean, how desperate is Coach Napier to maybe prove that I am the guy for the job? Will he be able to make those decisions? I think at times, Cade, this game will look like neither team wants to win it. It might be a little ugly, bull and shoe ugly, as good old JR would call it. I do think the Pac-2 Avengers that you mentioned, Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, will ultimately power Miami over the top.
See, and that's where we disagree.
Oh,
I think Miami gets themselves in a classic situation. When you are a good team, sometimes great teams, you cannot go into the swamp and expect to win a back-and-forth battle. You cannot expect to win a slugfest against the Gators in the Swamp unless you were a top 10 team and playing this iteration of Florida. But Miami is no top 10 team. They are no top 15 team. They are simply a good Miami team. And what is Florida going to do? They're going to throw everything at them. Every little thing you could. It's going to remind me of that Utah-Florida game from 2 years ago that was played here. It's going to be back and forth. It's going to be good to watch at times. It's going to be ugly at times. But Florida's going to win at the end of the day and at least start the season. Not saying they'll end it that way, but at least for now, they get off on the right foot.
Here's my problem with that. I don't think Florida has the bite that a Gator usually does.
Okay.
So I just might as well have no teeth, man. They ain't got it. I think this team's soft.
Okay. Like I said, if you watch the SEC tier list video, we'll get into this
a
lot more.
Yeah, a little teaser, a little nibble.
Absolutely. But we go to a team we talked about in the Week 0 video, New Mexico, playing Arizona in what is technically a rivalry game. If you want a fun stat, the last 27 meetings between these two, Arizona has won 14. New Mexico has won 13. So that goes all the way back between now and 1957.
You're telling me that New Mexico has a chance.
They do. It's that chance you see on your screen right there. It's 6.5. Arizona, 31.5-point favorites in this one. Noah Fafita.
Yeah.
That's really all I need to say. But Arizona's got a lot more talent than him. I mean, he is a phenomenal quarterback. He's got weapons around him. Fafita to McMillan. You're going to hear that a lot this year. That is going to be one of the deadliest combos, maybe the deadliest combo in the Big 12. We'll talk about that a little bit more. We're going to keep giving teases for all our tier ranking videos. That's just how this is going to go. But Arizona, they're a sleeper team, I think, to some of the Pac-12 teams that migrated over. They know what Arizona brings to the table. It's a late-night game. It's going to be a fun time out in the desert. Arizona comfortably beats New Mexico.
Yeah, no, Fafita really just kind of establishes himself, I think, as a real dark horse. Again, if you're looking at a country right now in terms of college football with not a lot of marquee quarterback names, Fafita is one of those. In a season like this, everything goes right. He rises up the charts, right, and kind of presents himself, and I think this will be a good start to that journey potentially.
So that's really all we have to say about that. I have no segue for that. That's just all we got to say about New Mexico, Arizona.
Look at us talking up Arizona. How about it?
Yeah, but either way, the next one, we got even less to talk about. It's Lindenwood in Kansas. Congratulations to Lindenwood. They're an FCS team now. They used to be D2. They moved up. The only problem, you're playing Kansas. Now, this is going to be the more interesting fact of this game is Kansas, obviously, the stadium reconstruction they're doing there, the, situation going on there. No home games in Lawrence this year. This is one of the few games played at Children's Mercy Park, home of Sporting Kansas City, if you follow MLS at all. So some of their games will be in Kansas City, Kansas this year. Some will be in Kansas City, Missouri. How about that? Playing in a completely different state. That fact I just said is going to be more interesting than this game because Jalen Daniels is going to do his thing. Kansas is going to be fine. And even if he doesn't play well, their run game is going to be fine.
Somewhere off in some Midwestern state, Todd Reeson will shed a tear at how beautiful this Kansas squad will look against Lindenwood and knowing that they are truly back. Rock, chalk, Jayhawk.
Well, there you go. That's really all that needs to be said there. Western Carolina and NC State, similar situation. We're just going through them right now. Some of those.
I knew you wouldn't be able to top the Kansas comment.
No. I'm not even going to try. It was one of the comments of all time. I'm not going to try to top it. NC State, 33-point favorites over the Catamounts. It might get uglier than that. It really depends on how NC State wants to play this one. It's one of those Thursday night games on the ACC network, so, we get a little bit earlier football before the main week gets going. And once again, NC State, you'll get to see the backups. You'll get to see a lot of the depth that they have this year.
Yeah, and I'm just, it's never one of those situations where I'm interested in the quarterback. How's Grayson McCall look? A lot of hype coming into the season. Obviously led a lot of great teams at Coastal Carolina, but now is playing big boy ball in the ACC. Is he going to be able to be at home quickly for the Wolfpack? We'll find out.
Look at this guy implying Sunbelt football isn't real big boy football.
I never said that.
You just said it. You just said it. They're playing big boy ball now. This guy.
You misunderstand.
This guy.
You misunderstand.
This guy. Either way, NC State winning by a lot.
Yes.
And that brings us to the final top 25 game we're talking about, Illinois State and Iowa. Iowa 22.5-point favorites in this one. The big question, of course, it is an Iowa team, so unfortunately we have to mention this. You know, we can't beat the dead horse any other way else. Offense question mark. That's really all I got to say. I have to say the question mark there because everyone needs to know. Cade McNamara, is he the guy? Can he throw at least 15 completed passes in a game should he be required to? We know the defense is going to be good. We know the special teams is going to be good. It's Iowa. Come on now. You know that's going to happen. But where's the offense going to be? Who's it going to come from? Or does Iowa win another 7-3 field goal and 2 safeties type situation again? I pray that never happens again. That's one of the worst, best experiences I've ever had watching a game.
This game will be another one of those that serves only the purpose of the home fan base to inflate their egos about their team. Iowa might put up half of their total season points in this game. They'll roll, but don't take much from it.
Okay then. But now we get to move on as I make one of my amazing segmented segues to the real show Thursday night, North Dakota State and Colorado. What are we doing here? Why would you ever schedule North Dakota State, first of all? That's number one. That's just to everyone. Don't schedule consistently one of the best FCS teams.
The Alabama of the FCS,
the
maybe?
Alabama of the FCS, at least from the 2010s onward, kind of that same time period, if you want to call it that. Colorado is a 10-point favorite in this game, however. There's a lot to prove for the Buffaloes. You go 4-8 last year. You have the entire offseason talk. You have a lot of topsy-turvy kind of uneasiness going on in Boulder right now. You've got Deion Sanders arguably starting verbal fights with reporters and refusing to take questions from them. I don't know what he's trying to hide here. I don't know what he's doing. All I know is if he's not careful, if his team is not careful, North Dakota State will beat them.
Yeah, this is one of those teams, similar to the Oklahoma State situation, where there's nothing to lose for North Dakota State. They're coming to us knowing, hey, we're one of the better programs, not just in FCS, but in the country. We mentioned the Bill Connolly SP Plus stuff. He has Colorado ranked 62nd. He has North Dakota State ranked 63rd. So on paper, he's got these teams near even. So that 10-point favorite, a little deceptive. Shadur, if you're going to have a Heisman campaign, if you're going to show that, hey, I can put this team on my back, it's got to start right here. And that offensive line is going to face a lot of pressure from this North Dakota State team because it's been bad so far over the last couple of years. You could argue, sadly, it may have been a little improved last year with the 4-8 squad, despite Shadur having to run for his life most of the time, move the pocket. But, yeah, if you're going to have the year that Deion thinks he could have in Boulder, you got to be able to perform here. No ifs, ands, or buts.
And you know the crazy thing about this, Tyler, is I think North Dakota State can win this game.
Oh, they can.
And beyond that, I think they will win this game. I'm going to be the guy who says it. I think North Dakota State comes into Boulder. I think this is a problem Colorado's going to run into a lot this year. We'll talk about it more again, that Big 12 tier list video. You're going to hear me not rant, but I guess you could call it ranting about Colorado. But they've put themselves in a situation this year where they're not going to be everyone's number one game, but they're definitely going to be in everyone's top three.
I mean, let's face it. They've put a target on themselves, right? With Deion's braggadocious style, which can work. He also puts a target on himself. He's always been that as a player, and he's been that as a coach, which if you could back it up like he had in his playing career, no issues, right?
Right.
Coach is a little different. He can't go out there and play for him. He can talk the talk for him, but they got to go walk the walk. So, the pressure's on those players, no doubt about it.
But I think North Dakota State gets one of their biggest wins in a while in terms of beating an FBS opponent. I think Colorado, I talk about it a little bit more in the tier list video. This is not going to be a fun season. If you thought last year was it was a good season for Colorado-wise in general, from 1 win to 4 wins, this year's going to be a roller coaster, to say the least, I think.
Bad season in Boulder, says Cade.
That's what I say. And we got one more Thursday night game to talk about on Fox. North Carolina taking on Minnesota. No Drake May for North Carolina anymore, but they're still 2-point favorites going to the place where they like to row the boat, PJ Fleck's Minnesota.
Now, this is an interesting one because one of the best kept secrets in the country. It really was if you spent more than 10 minutes watching North Carolina football. Their defense has not been good under Mac Brown. It has been leaky at best and downright atrocious at times. Minnesota probably isn't a legitimate contender in the Big Ten. You're looking at, arguably around an 8-win team, depending on how they break in some of these schedules. But I think they're a little bit tougher for North Carolina. They got the home advantage here. I just feel Minnesota will win this in a game where it's at times a little ugly, but in typical Big Ten fashion, the Big Ten team pulls it out in the end. They like the ugliness.
And this one is one of the more back and forth games in my mind. Because North Carolina, like you mentioned, does not have a good defense. Jeff Collins is their defensive coordinator. He was the guy that ran Georgia Tech into the ground, and they didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't find a ball if it was laying right in front of them. Minnesota's going to be a tough team. They've got a lot of good defenders. But North Carolina has an amazing running back to keep an eye on this year. North Carolina's still going to have those offensive weapons. It's, again, kind of like we talked about with some of these teams. Who's going to be the quarterback of this team to be able to right the ship and keep things going? Is North Carolina going to have their inevitable collapse we have late in the year? I don't know. This is a week one video. We're not talking about that, at least at this point. I think North Carolina is able to hold on for dear life here at Minnesota. But that 2-point favorite, that's pretty accurate. It might even be closer than that. It might be one of those 1-point type of wins. But either way, as always, folks, we thank you for watching. Feel free, once again, to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. We mentioned at the beginning, it doesn't take a whole lot of time, but it does mean a whole lot to us. So
join in on the discussion. Come on, have some fun.
Exactly. But, folks, until next time, have a good one, everybody, and enjoy week one. College football's back for everyone, so enjoy it, folks.